A potential serial killer now behind bars in Texas after admitting to 3 murders. Investigators now say he may be responsible for 8 to 10 more. Thanks for joining us today on Law&Crime Network. I'm Gillespie. So the accused serial killer is 62-year-old Raul Meza Jr., who admitted to the recent murder of his roommate, 80-year-old Jesse Fraga. But that's not where his confession stopped. He also implicated himself in the 2019 murder of 66-year-old Gloria Lofton. All this comes decades after Meza admitted to the 1982 rape and murder of 8-year-old Kendra Page, whose body was found in a dumpster near an elementary school. For that, Meza took a plea deal and was sentenced to 30 years in prison. But before he finished that sentence, he was released in 1993 after serving only 11 years. For the next few decades, Meza was in and out of prison, but then on May 24th of this year, he called Austin police and admitted to his roommate's murder and also implicated himself in a separate 2019 murder. 5 days later, the Lone Star Fugitive Task Force tracked him down at a hotel along the interstate. He was taken into custody and at the time found with a bag filled with zip ties, duct tape, ammunition, and even a pistol. Officials now say there are upwards of 10 murders that Meza could be responsible for, and detectives say that number could continue to grow. To break down this case and learn more about Meza's troubled history, we're joined now by Bruce Mills, the interim Austin assistant city manager, who is also the primary investigator in Kendra Page's 1982 murder investigation. Bruce, thank you so much for joining us today.
Certainly, you're welcome.
So what's interesting about this case right off the bat is that Meza himself contacted police and admitted to multiple murders over the phone. In your experience in law enforcement, is that something a suspect normally does?
Oh, in fact, no, it's very, very unusual. It's make believe on TV that you see that, but no, it's highly unusual. I talked to the detective that took the call. The 311 system in Austin is a non-emergency line that folks can call to report a type of crime or ask for police. And apparently he called and asked to be transferred to homicide. Many times that type of call might go to voicemail, expecting someone to call back. And as it was, the detective was in the office and answered the call. And that's when Meza proceeded to tell his story and confess to the crime, to the point that the detective who I spoke with later said the longer he talked, the more believable, of course, it became. And at the same time was looking on his computer and seeing if there was a murder in Pflugerville outside of Austin, and of course there was. So one thing led to another.
Some reports are labeling Meza as a serial killer, and that's a phrase that really grabs people's attention. Do you think it's fair to label him as a serial killer?
I do. By definition, 2 to 3 people killed would be convicted killing, or confessed killing would be considered a serial killer. Clearly, talking to our detectives and researching unsolved murders, there's no doubt that he killed at least 3. We know of 2 that he confessed to recently, and of course, Kendra Page 40 years ago, and in all likelihood, several more cases. So I think it's very fair to categorize him as a serial killer.
And it's cold cases that investigators are attempting to link Meza to. Why would investigators start there? What sort of connection would they need to determine?
Certainly, what they'll look for is patterns. With evidence from those cases, everything from photographic to location. One of the things that they learned, Meza traveled up and down Interstate 35 for different reasons. So even when they located him close to I-35 at a hotel. So, people, and sometimes these criminals are a creature of habit. And so they will look for connections, people that may have had family members in different locations. And of course, looking at manner of death on some of the cases, if that information is available. And then it's just a process of making those connections, and then looking for physical evidence, chemical evidence, and to tie someone back. And sometimes it's interviewing the suspect. And I don't know whether he will talk to our detectives again. Certainly, they're going to try. And sometimes people that at this point, he's later in, he's 40 years after this conviction we just talked about. And maybe he fully realizes that he's not going to get out of prison at this time, and maybe wants to clear his conscience and talk. All of those are unknown at this point.
Now, looking back to the murder of third grader Kendra Page, Mesa's case never went to trial and instead he took a plea deal. What did you make of it back then?
Well, it was completely unprecedented in my experience, and had been a homicide investigator for a couple of years, and had been in the police department 4 or 5 years, and so had, anecdotally at least, knew that these cases, you work them up for a long time. There's months and months of investigative follow-up work with laboratories and reporting and pre-trial, so it's months and months before a case like this would go to trial normally. And we were on the path of having evidence examined, getting ready to prepare for a trial. We'd been before a grand jury in Travis County to gain evidence. So it was an investigation in progress that we expected to go for a number of months. And we were, as I said earlier, scheduled to meet with the suspect. He was going to be coming in with his attorney to possibly give a statement. Many times it would have been a statement of trying to explain why they weren't involved. It'd be the time that, not to necessarily walk in and confess. We were prepared for that. And as I recall, I got a phone call from the district attorney's office saying that he would not be coming in with his attorney, and that there was a plea deal, and that this would not be going to court. The case was going to be pled.
For Page's murder, Mesa got that 30-year sentence and only served 11 years behind bars. What do you think went wrong?
You're right. He was sentenced to or agreed to 30 years for murder. I happened to be deputy chief or assistant chief at the time that he was released in '93, and I was asked then about the case, and it was, again, here we were 11 years after the fact, and that a person that should have never been out of jail, period, and certainly should have been sentenced to more than 30 years, was being released back into the public 11 years later. So I don't remember exactly what I said, but I was very disappointed and concerned for the safety of citizens. I felt like that with his history and his background, this person was not rehabilitated back to the community.
So do you believe, had he been given a larger sentence, let's say a life term or even 50 years behind bars, could that have saved people's lives?
No, it certainly would have. Again, knowing what we know now, this subject individual should have never and should never see outside of prison. Of course, again, he should not have. And as he told our detectives, he's prepared to kill again. He was fully prepared, had the materials to do it, and showed very little remorse. So that was how I remembered him at the time, and people that had conversations with him back in the '80s. That nothing would surprise me that he would have come out of prison and repeated.
Let's focus on his release now. After Mesa was set free on parole in 1993, some local news stations reported that he addressed the public, saying he changed his ways and he was sorry for killing Page. What do you make of that?
One of the things that I recall at that time, there was a big controversy about where he was going to be paroled to. And it could have been, I don't remember either seeing that story or ever hearing that. I wouldn't have believed it anyway, that he could have been, playing to the audience of, I'm rehabilitated, please let me live in your city. Because there was a huge outcry from the neighborhoods that said, we don't want this killer, because it was of course, it was a capital murder case with a lot of memories 11 years later that people related him to killing a little innocent child. And then now you want to come live in my neighborhood.
Were there warning signs over the past few decades that investigators may have missed?
I don't know, because I don't think with other cases you move forward, you assume that he's on parole, that he's being monitored, that justice will continue to be watching, and he's out of sight, out of mind. So I don't know that. I don't know now if there were something missed by from his parole officers or what have you. I wouldn't have that information, of course.
In your experience now, Bruce, what is next for investigators as they work to connect Meza to those other cold cases in the Austin area?
Very competent, very aggressive, cold unit detail as part of the homicide. Very versed in the techniques to be used to look at cases that are open, not just Austin area. With today's modes of travel, what have you, relationships around the country, they'll look beyond Austin area for, again, similar type cases. Obviously, it won't be a robbery in a type situation shooting. Typically, it'll be something similar to what he has done, whether it's a known victim or something that gives some similarities that would have detectives focus and hone in and dig deeper. And a lot of cases are solved that way. And then, of course, they'll look for, if there are similarities, they look for then ways to eliminate him as a suspect. That's with DNA or fingerprints or other type of trace evidence. So there's a lot of work to be done. Hopefully, again, from the comments I made earlier, maybe he's at a point in his life that he will talk. That's yet to be seen. He may not now. He may, who knows? He may go to trial, may be convicted, and may want to talk later. And we've seen that happen. So it's early. It's very early, of course, in this capture and in this follow-up investigation.
This is definitely an interesting case, one that Law&Crime Network will want to continue to follow as it develops and see kind of how it plays out. But Bruce, thank you so much for joining us and giving us excellent input today.
Thank you.
Right now, Meza is being held in the Travis County Jail in Austin, Texas. He faces multiple charges, including capital murder and unauthorized use of a vehicle. Reporting for Law&Crime Network, I'm Gillespie.